Welcome to the first ever episode of Fail or Fire. I'm Thundarius, and I am joined by my amazing co-hosts,
Shades
and Dillon.
Fail or Fire is a brand new series where we review all sorts of media and tell you whether we think it's a fail, fire, or just plain mid. These videos will be chaptered out for your viewing pleasure and structured the same way every time. We're going to start this with a summary of the movie, followed by our non-spoiler thoughts and reactions. Then we'll give you our rating. After that, we'll go into spoiler talks. So if you haven't seen what we're talking about, you can get our recommendation, go watch it, and come back to watch spoiler talk. All right, so you want to give us our summary, Dillon?
So Godzilla Minus One was directed by Takashi Yamazaki. It is post-war Japan at its lowest point, when a new crisis emerges in the form of a giant monster baptized in the horrific power of the atomic bomb.
This movie takes place at the very end of World War II, and it follows a kamikaze pilot. What happens with his life at the end of the war, his interactions with Godzilla, Japan's struggle to try to figure out how to defeat Godzilla. Thoughts and reaction, boys. Thoughts and reactions. What did you think?
I was skeptical. I would say it was very, very well done until, I don't know, 3/4 of the way through. And then I started noticing little things here and there, but nothing crazy enough to be complaining about. Like, it looked well done visually until like certain things started happening, and then you could really tell like CGI just wasn't where it should have been.
Well, the reason for that, this movie was made on a budget of $15 million, which is over $100 million to $200 million less than your modern Hollywood blockbusters.
All right, fair enough. So then it was still done well.
For the effects, it was done extremely well for the budget. It won Best Effects at the Oscars. So.
Okay. So I didn't know anything about this movie until Thundy was like, hey, let's watch this movie. I'm like, okay.
And to note that the whole movie's in Japanese, so you got to read subtitles the whole time. Yeah. So that was my one thing I was worried about, was if Shays was going to want to read subtitles for 2 hours.
The only problem was I can't read and I don't know Japanese. So like Japanese, Chinese, dirty knees. Look at these.
What about you, Dillon?
Okay, so
we just did.
Hey, go with it. It's beautifully shot. The set pieces, wardrobe, it literally feels like it's from post World War II. Like, it feels perfect for its time. It feels like a classic Godzilla film. Yeah. The effects, I like the effects. I think that's part of the charm. You know, the Godzilla creature itself looks good, but it doesn't look overly Jurassic Park, you know, like Godzilla 99 or even some of the newer stuff, which is heavily CG. I like the fact that it looked like it did. The one thing that you guys mentioned, and I wish I would have watched it when I just hit play. I watched it on Netflix. It was English dubbed, and that really took away from me. You know, the dub was good, but I wish I would have watched it in Japanese with the English subtitles. I think I would have enjoyed the performances a little more. So I kind of had that to pick apart. The dub is okay, but it definitely takes away some of the charm and some of the emotion from the acting.
So there's no way to select sub or dub, because I know they do with some of their anime.
Oh, there is after the fact. After I'd already watched it
later.
No, yeah, I just hit play and I was like, oh man, I wish this was in Japanese.
This dropped. It was only supposed to drop on video rental, digital, and digital purchase. And then they said, surprise, we're dropping it on Netflix too. So you can go watch this right now on Netflix. There is an English dub and an English sub. And you want the subtitles. You want to read it. You want to hear it in Japanese. It's just so much better. They also made it in black and white and re-released it in its limited theaters. Which
I think that would be
to watch it in black and
beautiful.
white.
Sure. If we would have watched it in black and white first, I think that definitely would have helped with my thoughts.
Yeah, like the CGI, like it feels a little stiff at times when it's like the full shots. But, you know, when you realize they're working with a $15 million budget, you understand where they left some on the table and where they put that money. And there were some scenes that were just insane. So the way that he does his atomic breath, I love it. I absolutely love it, dude. I thought at times some of the pacing, there's times where it felt like it was starting to drag with the dual stories going on. following our main character. Then as soon as it was like, this is kind of dragging, then they come back with the rest of it. But I feel like at times there could have been a little bit of fat trimmed from it, and made it
I think so.
better.
Yeah, the pacing, I would kind of hang my hat on that as well. A little slow burn at first. The final act is phenomenal. I have no complaints about the final act. I mean, it's full speed ahead. But yeah, up till that point, it drug a little bit.
We'll talk about it more in the spoilers about what actually is happening during the story. Overall, I mean, I thought it was a great Godzilla movie, because I've seen this twice now, and these guys have only seen it once. The second time, I feel like it made it better, because I could kind of understand where everything was going. I knew how the pacing was going to be. I feel like I could notice a lot more. I'm still having to read subtitles, but I can actually catch a little bit more of what's happening while that's going on.
I kind of mentioned, off air a little bit. I have a really hard time like ranking this movie or rating it. It's incredibly well done. It's shot well. The acting performances are solid, even with the dub. The performances are good. Creature design is solid. I definitely think you have to be at least a more than casual Godzilla fan. I think this movie's going to be a little bit hard to grab people that aren't fans of its history per se. And I think that's kind of where I fall. I like the newer, the metaverse or whatever. I like Godzilla 99. I think it's a fun movie. People hate on that one. It's a good time. But I'm not big on the lore. And I'm not a lifelong Godzilla guy, and I think that's where, for me, it was something that I could get into, but it's not going to be like a multiple time viewing for me.
I watched a lot of Godzilla films growing up. I have a few on VHS at my mom's house somewhere. When I got Godzilla 98, I was a huge fan when that came out because of the age I was. I loved the animated series, and I wore that movie out. So you know what I did after we watched this movie last night? I went and watched Godzilla 98.
It's a good movie.
It did not hold up as well as I remembered. Like,
that'll happen.
I feel like it's a better movie if it wasn't Godzilla. A lot of it just did not feel like Godzilla, especially after watching. I haven't seen the new Godzilla and Kong movie, but I've seen pretty much everything else. So comparing all of that and Minus One to 98, I was like, it doesn't really feel like Godzilla, but it feels like a big monster disaster movie that should have been titled something else, and it would have worked a little bit better, I think.
So you mentioned growing up watching the Godzilla flicks. Is there some nostalgia? Is that what's missing for me, perhaps?
Maybe,
I'm trying to
maybe.
The reviews are phenomenal. This movie's done very well. You very rarely will see a poor review for this movie, and I wouldn't give it bad marks, but it just doesn't connect with me. Something's missing, and I don't know if maybe that's what it is. I've got a lot of friends that are lifelong Godzilla and kaiju films, and that's just not my wheelhouse per se.
It very well could be.
I just remember like old school Godzilla, black and white. I don't even remember what one it was. It was a while ago. I mean, it was pretty good back then when I was a kid. That's kind of why I wanted to watch the one we just watched, and it didn't disappoint. It didn't make me hate it. I would definitely watch it again.
And it's also, if you're not one who likes foreign films and reading subtitles, this definitely won't be for you. If you can appreciate that and look at it for almost the art piece that it is, at least from that standpoint, you can appreciate the movie a lot more. But I think that nostalgia factor, because there was a lot of people I've watched, they've loved it, and they have watched pretty much every Godzilla movie. So I think that'll make an impact on your viewing. I know the friends that I can pretty much recommend it to and not recommend it to. See,
and my son's a big fan. Like Shin Godzilla is his, that's his event horizon for Godzilla flicks. He loves Shin Godzilla. And again, it doesn't speak to me the same way it does to him. A friend of mine I was talking to this morning about this movie shared kind of the same thing, that he's going to have to go back and rewatch both, because up to that point, Shin Godzilla is his favorite of the Japanese Godzilla flicks. I'm not sure. Like I said, there's just something missing for me. If you were to go through what makes a movie good, I would check all the boxes, but it's just there's something that doesn't hook me, and I can't put my finger on it. But yeah, I just think it's experience and background. It's not something that's ever been in my wheelhouse. I enjoyed it. If people are into it, or like those kind of movies, I would recommend it. Something about it just wasn't quite there for me.
The tone of the movie is something that I think we need to discuss. A lot of the Hollywood Godzilla movies that have been out, the Kong movies, they're big action, adventure. There's a lot of comedy. That is not this movie. This movie is very serious throughout the whole time. There's maybe a couple of laughs here and there, but it's a very serious movie dealing with very serious themes. You know, the end of a war and the devastation that brings, PTSD for a soldier who was in that war. So if you're not looking for something like that, this might not be what you're looking for. It's more of an art piece and a very serious message than just have fun, watch Godzilla destroy things type of movie.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's where the way I watch this plays into that. The English dub, the tone doesn't feel the same. It hits a lot differently. Definitely, I think the way to experience this movie would be in the Japanese with English subtitles. The English dub just loses a lot of that punch. It feels a little hokey, a little more comedic unintentionally. It's just the way the voices come out, the mismatch, you know, with the way the mouths move versus how the words come out. It just loses the tone. I think it's a completely different experience not watching it in the Japanese with English subtitles.
All right, well, I guess let's move into fail, fire, or mid. Who wants to give their first? Is it a fail, fire, or is it just plain mid?
I'll go first. I'm gonna go with fire. Like I said, it was well done.
Dillon, fail, fire, or just plain mid?
So like I said, I've been struggling since we decided to cover this. And like I said, all the boxes, if I was just sitting back and critiquing this film for its craftsmanship, it's an easy decision. But just because after watching it, the way I wanted to feel about it wasn't there, I can't fail it. So it's mid.
All right, that's your diagnosis. That's okay.
I don't like it.
You're fired. Get out of here.
Episode 1, I'm canceled.
This is how long you lasted on the channel, folks. But that's fine. As we go, we're going to have a difference of opinions, and that's where we're going to breed interesting conversations, because you already know Thundy's rating it fire from the get-go. It's fire in my book, but I'm also a Godzilla fan. You're going to ask me Godzilla versus Kong, it's Godzilla all day, baby. All day. That overgrown chimp ain't got no shot at taking down the king.
I mean, if he goes up against this Godzilla, no way.
See, and I think Skull Island is the best of the modern Godzilla, you know, the creature, kaiju, whatever metaverse they're trying to create. I love Skull Island. I think for me, that's of the modern era, that's the peak for me.
Yeah, I didn't mind that. It's been a while though. We might have to be fun to kind of go down the road of trying out watching some of these. All right, so if you're still here and you haven't seen this movie, you're gonna want to go watch it before we move into spoiler talk, unless you just don't care. So with that being said, here's the first appearance of Godzilla.
Huge.
I mean, this one isn't as big as later, and I don't think this Godzilla is as big as the one in the Hollywood movies that are out right now. Those ones are very I feel like they're almost Marvel-esque in how they're written. They're almost a little too over the top, superhero gimmicky, versus a little bit more grounded, like I feel this movie is. What's your initial reaction to the first version of this Godzilla we see on screen?
See, I think that's fire. I think that the creature design was phenomenal. That whole sequence, pretty intense. It wasn't too clean. I like the fact that he's like grimy. Yeah, just kind of rough and rugged. It's not like a polished, again, like a dinosaur looking creature. It definitely looks like something that's been exposed to some radiation.
I mean, I liked it. It just, to me, it didn't have the same Godzilla vibe.
Just because he was a lot faster.
Faster, yeah, definitely more advanced.
It was a lot smaller, so it was a little bit easier to move versus later in the movie when he's a lot bigger. Because, you know, he's not that big in this scene. He's on this little bitty island.
These body throws and stuff were done well.
Like right there. That scene right there was pretty dope. He's like, I don't give up.
Yep.
He's just tearing people to shreds. So what did you think about the human element of this movie, I guess? That's kind of something that's been a difficult thing, it seems, to balance in Godzilla movies. Like some of the older ones were pretty much just like Godzilla smash. The newer movies have really dove into extra human elements, storylines, a lot of stuff that a lot of the time doesn't even matter within the context of Godzilla.
Of what little Godzilla films I've seen, old and new, I think this is probably the most character and story driven one I've ever seen. I think they did a really good job of making it not where Godzilla was necessarily secondary to the storyline, but the human characters stand out on equal measure. So I thought that was pretty impressive.
I like the human side of it. Very crazy lifestyle.
Seeing like post World War II, end of World War II Japan, and what it probably really looked like and what these people had to live through and live within. I think the balancing of like end of World War II going into this, how the countries would react is interesting. And the whole like kamikaze pilot who flaked on being a kamikaze pilot and essentially dishonored his family and himself by doing so, and how they discussed it. I thought it was interesting that they had a lot of, it seemed like quite a critique about the history of the government in Japan, ways that they did things and how it was transitioning to a new future away from being like not caring about the lives of their military and the citizens. I was kind of surprised at how strong of critique was actually made, and just the humanizing side of people like struggling with that. Well, this is how it's supposed to be for an honorable death versus kind of a waste of human life. Like, let's build ejector seats.
I think it's crazy that there's even such thing as a kamikaze pilot, that like for you to not, kill yourself, everybody doesn't like you.
Right.
Yeah.
He came back, like that neighbor lady was so upset with him about it. So upset, but everybody comes around in time. It was really interesting and different the way that they did the romance angle, because they weren't really together until the end of the movie.
Yeah, pretty much. I was gonna say like not at all. Here's a baby.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's this random baby. I'm gonna bounce. What would you do if some random chick in a marketplace hands you a baby and runs off?
First off, I wouldn't have opened my hands up and been like, here. Well, give me your baby. Like I'm asking questions first.
I mean, typically the ladies out there are asking shades to give them babies, not the other way around. Did you have a favorite human character in this movie?
I kind of like the mad scientist guy. Can't remember his name.
Professor?
Offhand.
I like
Yeah,
dude.
This guy?
That guy on the right.
The captain of the little boat? I liked him a lot too. It works well to all the storylines with how everybody meets and interacts and is interwoven in the story. It makes sense that they would be out there mine sweeping and getting rid of mines, and Godzilla shows up.
Yep.
I think his regeneration effects are pretty solid. He takes pretty significant damage, and they're feeling like they might have him on the ropes, and then he just regenerates and he's angry.
When they get that first one in his mouth and they blow it up,
Like half of his face is gone, and then just pops back in.
Imagine this motherfucker being behind you and you're in this tiny wooden boat, and this thing can take down aircraft carriers and battleships. Are you hoping you're wearing your brown pants?
what pants?
I like the eyes. Like, they're not lizardy, they're almost humanish, I guess you want to say. They're not
human, or like,
not like a
he looks like a
reptile.
puppy. It's like a big scary
Right.
puppy.
And I mean, the original Godzilla had these big goofy eyes. We were talking about the regeneration. I like the visual representation that they do with this.
I thought it was crazy that it wasn't that far into the movie and they just blew him up and he was dead. And I'm like, it was kind of easy. Yeah, and then he comes back and regenerates, and I'm like, all right, this is going to be a whole lot worse than I thought.
Right. The tone shifts. The atomic blasts. Probably the coolest scene of the whole movie.
I would agree. I think that's super well done. I kind of mentioned at the kickoff to this thing, the effects. This is where they really shine. For a budget like they had. I mean, this looks like a $150 movie. $150 million movie. It doesn't look like a $15 million movie. And this is like definitely where it stands out.
A lot of the budget went into this specific scene when he attacks and shows off the atomic breath like this. I like the way that they, pop out of his back. It's so cool. I like the visual representation. They didn't just light up, but they like actively pop out and slam in when he fires.
It definitely lets you know that there was going to be an issue.
The charge from tail up to his head, super well done.
I think it might be one of the most devastating atomic blasts in a Godzilla movie. Just the way that it happens, the damage that comes from it. It's massive, dude. Almost just like without the excess radiation and fall out like a nuclear blast going off. Since Godzilla is really a critique on war and nuclear, bombs. Then we have the aftermath. Were you shocked that our female protagonist pushes him away, saves him, and apparently perishes? What were your initial thoughts when you saw her seemingly die?
I was pretty shocked, man. Honestly, it was pretty impactful.
Yeah, it was questionable to me on why she did it, but I mean, I get why she did it.
You could tell they both loved each other, but because of his internal war, which this movie does great at covering someone with PTSD from wartime. So the plan to defeat Godzilla, the government cannot officially interact because of the Soviets. The US and the Japanese government both have their hands tied. The citizens have to come up with their own plan to stop Godzilla.
The plans that they hatch out to dispose of Godzilla, you got to remember this is in the post-World War II. What they had at their disposal, they didn't have crazy rocket power aircraft that they use in this thing is pretty cutting edge for its time, which is pretty impressive. The whole scheme is very solid. I like that they didn't take any liberties or make it too far-fetched. They used what they had at their disposal. They got creative with their resources and hatched a pretty brilliant plan.
And most of, everything that they had access to had been decommissioned and all the weapons had been removed as part of,
Yes.
The end of the war. Wherever they sourced those bombs, there may have been some help from the government to get those bombs. Everything else had been decommissioned, so they were out there without weapons.
I think it's brilliant. Using what they know, some general science, and I think they really thought outside the box and used, the ocean and water, something that typically would give Godzilla an advantage over them. They used that to be hopefully his demise. I thought it was pretty clever.
And my first thought when they were talking about it was, well, he's from the ocean. Like, what's this gonna do? And then they actually addressed that, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, I thought it was solid.
I thought it was a great idea. I was kind of thinking, leave it down there as far as you can. With all that pressure that it's going to be having, being all the way down there, can't withstand that, right?
What were your thoughts on the final battle?
So the final battle, all the naval ships and, the boats circling him. And I liked the whole process, the death blow, the kamikaze plane. I feel like the ejector seat thing was way too heavy-handed. I do kind of have that critique. Definitely big foreshadowing. The kamikaze pilot's going to be brave and actually become a kamikaze pilot, but not really because he's got this ejector switch. I feel like they set that up too much. I don't know that anybody watching actually thought that the pilot was dead.
All right, so if you made it this far and you didn't care about spoilers, here's where Godzilla dies.
And we're done.
I thought it was really cool blowing up his brain, hoping that does the job. After the fight, we find out he lives because of the ejector seat, and then we find out that she lived somehow. I don't see how it's possible that she lived. After witnessing the devastation of that atomic blast, there's no way she should have survived.
And let's be honest, she's minimally damaged. I mean, they wrapped her up in gauze a few places, but she's no worse for the wear.
That scene when she pushes him out of the way and gets devastated, the blowback, and you see all that debris flying, she's getting impaled with something at the very least. I feel like the point of this movie was to show all the horrors, but that as mankind we can overcome and have a happy ending. One of the main points was to have a happy ending. I think it would have been a better movie if both of them died, or at least she died, because I don't think there's a way she should have lived. What do you guys think?
No, I agree. I think they played it safe. They delivered a pretty solid flick and a pretty epic conclusion, and then they hit you with the rope-a-dope. Oh, there they are. They're both alive and well, and look at this happy ending. Tone of the movie was set up to have a somber end, and then I don't know if they chickened out.
I'd be interested doing a deeper dive, hearing what maybe the directors had to say, if there was a different ending, why it became this ending. Having him as a kamikaze pilot eject that whole storyline as a critique of the feelings in Japan at the time was almost necessary to the story they were telling. So I can see why they went that route versus him killing himself to do this, especially when you see at the end Godzilla's not really dead. He's going to come back. I feel like it would almost be a wasted sacrifice. It still would prove the point in a way, I guess. Her being alive, though, doesn't make any sense to me. She should have stayed dead. It would have been more meaningful to him taking care of this kid and you making sure you make the most of the time you've got with people, because stuff like this can happen. All right, so here we go. This is the end of the movie, and we got Godzilla's, maybe his tail down in the water, coming back to life in credits. I mean, you gotta set up for a sequel.
Oh, okay. The first time I seen it, I didn't see the negative part. I was like, oh, right there is kind of leading into it.
Oh man, they would be a fool not to make another movie. People love this movie. It won an Oscar for visual effects. They did it on a $15 million budget. They told a great all-around story. I think people should go watch this movie if you're into Godzilla, if you like foreign films, and if you can handle a serious film. What do you guys think?
No, it's definitely worth a watch. Like I said, my perspective is completely different having watched the English dub, and I really regret that. I'll probably have to give it a second go in Japanese with the English subtitles, and it'll probably change my perspective. Probably change my opinion of the film as well. But if you do watch
that one in black and white,
yeah, that'd be sweet. But yeah, I definitely think there is a right and a wrong way to watch this film. I picked the wrong one.
The wrong way is to watch it with the English dub.
Yes, don't do it. Don't do it.
I didn't know that the movie was made with such little money compared to how well it looked, I suppose. Made me think of, I don't know, another movie that was made with very little money and looked very impressive.
Well, yeah, what movie's that?
I think it's called Tapehead.
It's called Tapehead?
Yeah. Very well done.
The Return of Jacob Cobb.
Hell yeah.
Starring yours truly, Mr. Dillon, right down there.
Hey, we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of its release.
We might have to do something special for that. Thank you for joining us for the first ever episode of Fail or Fire. If there's something specific you'd like to see us review in this format, or if you want to see us turn Godzilla Minus One into a deep dive on our Hall of Fandom live streams, let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video or found it informative, please
Atomic Blast
that thumbs button and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, as we have more videos just like this one on the way. So until next time, Cyber Skull Mafia, we're gonna go grab some popcorn, catch another flick. See ya.
Bye, friends.
Later.